Welcome to Independence Day in Noir Alley. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. Let me start by apologizing to those of you born between March 20th and April 19th. Now, it's the rare film that hangs the motivations of its villain on a zodiac sign, but that's the case with today's film, The Sign of the Ram, made at Columbia in 1948. So all you Aries out there, don't take it personally. I know how temperamental you can be. The Sign of the Ram is only borderline noir, but its creation is a tale of tragedy and triumph, and more tragedy. It's a production unique in movie history, due entirely to its star. Susan Peters came with her family to Hollywood from Spokane, Washington in 1928 after her father was killed in a car accident. Now, spotted by a talent scout when she was still a student at Hollywood High School, she had a few bit parts at Warner's under her real name, Susan Carnahan. And even though she made an impression in 1942's The Big Shot opposite Humphrey Bogart, Warner's didn't see any real potential and they dropped her. But MGM snapped her right up, changed her name to Peters, and groomed her as an ingenue. She immediately scored a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Random Harvest, one of 1942's biggest hits. Take that, Warner Brothers. MGM cast her in a couple of films as love interest to 23-year-old actor Richard Quine, and their romance wasn't confined to the set. They were married in 1943. The same year, Susan was named one of Hollywood's Stars of Tomorrow. The sky was the limit for the 22-year-old. But in early 1944, she suffered a miscarriage, which resulted in her being off-screen for an entire year. Now, to celebrate her eventual recovery, Quine took his wife on a duck hunting trip, New Year's Day, 1945. At some point, Peters' rifle accidentally discharged, and the bullet lodged in her spine and left her paralyzed from the waist down. For almost 2 years, MGM kept the convalescing actress on the payroll. Peters vowed she'd make a comeback. But when no projects were forthcoming, she asked out of her contract. Peters didn't want charity, she wanted to work. Actor Charles Bickford gave her a copy of Margaret Ferguson's 1945 novel, The Sign of the Ram, which revolved around a wheelchair-bound matriarch manipulating the lives of her family in a remote manor on the coast of Cornwall. It was just the challenge Peters was looking for. At MGM, she'd complained that the studio kept sending me Pollyanna scripts about crippled girls who were all sweetness and light, which I kept turning down. Peters took the novel to her agent, Frank Orsatti, who roped in retired director-producer Irving Cummings. Cummings had been an actor in silent pictures and a prominent director of Fox musicals in the 30s. Cummings brought aboard his screenwriter's son, Irving Jr., to serve as line producer, his first such experience. The producers felt they were making another Rebecca, and although they couldn't get Alfred Hitchcock at the helm, they got his one-time collaborator Charles Bennett to do the script. The Man Who Knew Too Much, The 39 Steps, and Foreign Correspondent were all Bennett scripts. Now, once Columbia signed on as the distributor, The Sign of the Ram was to be directed by one of the studio's workhorses, Joseph H. Lewis. But at some point, he was replaced by John Sturges, rapidly rising through the B ranks on his way to being one of the top directors in the business. Here he gets an invaluable assist from cinematographer Burnett Guffey, who revels in the story's old dark house atmospherics. The film co-stars Alexander Knox, Phyllis Thaxter, Peggy Ann Garner, and Dame Mae Whitty, all in support of a truly heroic comeback performance from leading lady Susan Peters. Los Angeles Times critic Edward Shallard waxed poetic in his opening day review, lauding Peters' exceptional ability as an actress, but would that her reintroduction had been accomplished along lines less cruelly severe. Here is 26-year-old Susan Peters in her most memorable role, The Sign of the Ram.